I'm Matt Mitovich with the cast of Pennyworth here at the TVLine Comic-Con suite. Welcome to Comic-Con.
Thank you.
Oh, yeah.
First of all, for Bruno and Danny, what all do we know about Alfred Pennyworth's through canon, through, assorted Batman and Gotham canon? What's been established? I know there isn't much.
Very little. That's one of the reasons we wanted to tell this story, and also it was a chance to tell a story that was pre the canon, that so you weren't tied down by all the strings and elements that have already been established. That and the fact that Michael Caine insisted that Pennyworth was an ex-SAS soldier meant that there was a story there to be told. How does an SAS soldier end up becoming a butler in America? That's the essence of where the story came from. And then it was the chance to tell a DC story in a completely new place, with a completely different kind of storytelling that doesn't rely on spandex and capes and all that sort of stuff, because he'd look very silly in spandex and a cape.
I don't know.
She looked great in spandex and cape. No,
I'm not sure.
But we'd seen Gotham in the past, and we'd seen Metropolis in the past. We'd never seen a London. We didn't know what was happening on the other side of the Atlantic. So, what was their history? How, what was London like during this period? And so that was great to do something that we remembered as kids, but to go 13 degrees slightly towards the darkness.
As I'm watching the first, couple episodes, I'm thinking, yeah, he's, trying to get the security business started, but he's basically a fixer. He's kind of like fixing problems for people in the first couple episodes.
Yeah, well, he doesn't have the proper plan, does he, Jack?
Yeah, that was how that was sort of, that's how it starts, and then it grows, I suppose.
I mean, that's essentially what butlers do is fix things. So
That's
ironically,
true.
he's training.
Yeah.
He's in training. It's a very long training, but he's in training for what he eventually becomes.
Ben, tell us about Thomas Wayne and what regard he has for this Alfred Pennyworth that he meets.
I think he's very intrigued by him and kind of needs his skills. When we meet Thomas, he appears to be a fish out of water and somewhat out of his depth. I'm not sure that he completely is, but there's something that Alfred has that Thomas definitely needs, and that's protection. And kind of navigating through this edgy, kind of dark, macabre London that Bruno's created that's part of our story. And Thomas doesn't know how to get through that without Alfred's smarts. So he kind of is very attracted to him in that sense and needs him.
And Thomas is still single at this point.
Yeah, he is a bit of a player, actually. Well, I've
If you
decided.
say so.
There's a scene. Yeah,
Quick, write that into season 2.
there's a scene that says something like that. But yes, still single. Yeah, but Martha Kane does turn up, and I guess the series chronicles the beginning of those sparks between them and them getting to know each other, and it's definitely not a love at first sight vibe at all. They're quite wary of each other. I don't think they particularly like each other. In fact, I don't think anyone really likes Thomas, or Thomas likes anyone. No. I mean the other characters. Anyway.
And Jack, what does Alfred think of Thomas when he first meets him? Because Thomas is like dying to go into business with him, but you seem to be keeping him at arm's length. You seem wary of him.
When they first meet, obviously it's a chance meeting, and he doesn't really think anything of it. And then, he gets his name wrong for a start off, and then it all sounds a little bit too good to be true, I think. And Alfred is always a few steps ahead of people, and I think he's certainly wary of him. Although he can't really say no in the end, because. But
Thomas is trying to pull Alfred back into a world that I think Alfred's trying to escape from, and Thomas wants him to do the work that Alfred doesn't want to do anymore, which is kind of slightly underground espionage, kind of dark stuff that he's trying to get out of, isn't he?
Yeah.
Well, we do get some flashbacks to Alfred's time in the war. What are those ultimately informing us about him?
One of the things that is tough for soldiers, real combat soldiers, is they both hate what they did and love it. And there's no substitute for it in the real world. It's like an addiction to something horrible that you can't shake. So as much as he doesn't want to be drawn back into that bloody world, there's something inside him pulls him that way anyway, despite his better instincts. That's the nice thing about him as a character. He's a hard man with a soft heart.
He's about to be decades from this guardian to the world's greatest vigilante superhero. So, you know, who can you learn from? It has to be somebody with a huge expanse of knowledge and experience and the darkness and all those things that Bruce Wayne's going to come up against. So the great thing about this story is going back in the past, and you realise that the man who's going to give advice needs to experience these things for himself as well. So that was a great amount of story that we had sitting on our laps right there.
Paloma, you play Bette Sykes.
Yeah.
How are you describing her? Because she is a piece of work.
Well, men fear scary women, don't they? Because they think of their mothers. But I feel like, you know, the idea we were just talking about Martha Kane, and I think it's important to kind of contextualise it that in the 60s women were like culturally and socially supposed to stay at home, and what I like about this is that Martha Kane, Bette Sykes, Esme and all the female characters are quite empowered for that era, and I think they're almost more scary sometimes because they're quite powerful, and that's just sort of a general thing about the female characters. But in terms of Bette Sykes, I think she is extremely complex and multi-dimensional, and I personally have played her in a way that's I've tried to empathise, because, you know, bad things happen to people and they become a product of those things, and I mean, I love her. I think that she has good reason to have ended up the way she has, and I feel like as the series progresses, you get to kind of like I feel like as a viewer you become a bit confused, because at first you're like, oh, she's the villain, she's scary, but then you see different sides of her, and she has a sister, and she has a really strong relationship with her sister. And you see how complex it is. It's not just literally like, these are the good guys and these are the bad guys. And I think Bette Sykes and Alfred Pennyworth have quite a lot in common. They come from working class backgrounds. They've both had to fight the good fight kind of thing. And both of them believe that even though fighting for opposing views, they both believe that their cause is a just one, and at times later you see that sometimes they're fighting for the same cause, and even they're confused by it because they kind of think we're supposed to not like each other, why are we working together? And I think that's interesting.
For the producers, what do you want to say about the larger mythology as far as, you know, the greater threat that's going on throughout the series? Is it this Ravens Club, or?
One of the underlying concepts here is that for those who sort of really into the mythology, is that this is England on the way towards the England of V for Vendetta, because that's what if there is an England in the DC mythology, that's it. So it's about civil war, and looking back at the real English Civil War, or even the American Civil War, the really interesting thing about them, or exciting thing about them, or dramatic thing, is that it's very hard to draw lines with who's on what side. And the lines of the conflict cross families and friendships, and, you know, so you're betraying people very close to you in the Civil War, or allying yourself with people that you'd never imagined that you'd ally yourself with. And it's hard to say who's
Brexit.
Yeah. Well, yeah, and it's almost impossible to say who are the good guys and who are the bad guys. One of the things we've tried to do with the show is not fall into kind of obvious tropes of who the good guys are and who the bad guys are. It looks like at the start it's very clear that the Raven Society are the bad guys, and they're certainly not good guys, but it gets more complex as it goes along.
And then lastly, what sort of opportunities for Easter eggs do you have with a show set so far in the past?
There'll be a big egg, which is you're going to get to see the Waynes conceive the egg that will become Batman.
Wow.
And it is a pretty naughty show. We're going to actually see them conceive.
Well, I don't know that we'll do the sort of gynecological, the obstetric shots, but yeah, there's like, special effects with
The difference
little
about-
Immaculate conception.
there'll be a little wiggly sperm with
And wings.